Thanks, everybody. Welcome to today's Audit Committee meeting. This is a public meeting. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting the public can attend. I'm Councillor Glenn Bluff, Vice Chair of the Audit Committee, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. I'd like to outline the domestic arrangements for the meeting. We're not expecting a fire alarm or practice today. If the alarm does sound, please leave the chamber, turn right, down the stairwell, and through the emergency exit on the ground floor. The assembly point is in the public square in front of CAST. Anybody with mobility issues should wait in the refuge area near the lift, just out here, and use the intercom for call for assistance. I've suggested I'll carry Iris down.
He always says that.
This meeting will be recorded and published on the Council's website. By entering the Council chamber, you're accepting that you will be recorded and your images will be retained and broadcast by the Council. If anyone intends to record today's meeting, please ensure that this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting. Please ensure your mobile phone are switched to silent, and I will now commence the meeting. So, welcome to Grant Thornton. Thanks for coming today. Before we start the formal business on the agenda, I'd like to welcome our new member, Councillor David Nimitz. Hi, David. As our new member of the Audit Committee, has recently replaced Councillor Dave Shaw. So I'd like to place on record that our thanks to Councillor Shaw for his contribution to the Audit Committee, in particular around taxi licensing, which he was always keen to contribute to. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to the Chair and members of the Elections and Democratic Structures Committee. Thank you, Emma. Who is in attendance today for item 5 on the agenda. So thank you for Emma for coming today. Thank you. Revisions to the corporate procedure rules. So this is to provide opportunity for both members of the Audit Committee and the Elections and Democratic Structures Committee to provide feedback on the proposed changes. So we'll move on to item 1. Apologies for absence. Did you find Stuart?
He's not in the
Yeah. Okay, he's not coming late. Okay, so I do have apologies from Austin White, and do you want me to mark the apologies for the EDSC? Yeah, so we've got Vice Chair Nick Allen, apologies, and from Gemma Cobby and James Church. Okay, are there any other apologies? Okay, good. Moving on to item 2, the exclusion of public and press. There are no items on the agenda where the public and press are to be excluded. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Excellent, thank you. If somebody does realise that there is one, please complete the declaration form and forward it to Government Services. Item 4, minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on the 28th of November. Has anybody had a chance to read the minutes? Those who are here. Can the minutes be moved as a true and accurate record?
I'll second that.
And second by Iris. Thank you. Okay, and then item 5, not missed anything. The revision to the council contract procurement rules. As I outlined earlier, I'd like to welcome members of the Elections and Democratic Structures Committee to the meeting and welcome their contributions and questions as we go on. And as members have already read the report, can I ask Holly? Welcome back, Holly. I'm sure you love this every year. Welcome, Holly, Head of Procurement, if she wishes to bring any specific items to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted. Over to you, Holly.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read, just to remind committee members that these revisions have been brought to your to committee and will ultimately go to full council. They've been brought about by the introduction of the new Procurement Act 2023, which will go live on the 24th of February 2025. And also there's been amendments made to the rules around to help with ambiguity and procedural difficulties that we've experienced. So hopefully to make it clearer for officers as they're using these rules. Thank you.
Okay, does any member wish to speak? Okay, we'll start with Mr. Councillor Heath.
Not questions so much, Chair, but comments. Can I refer you to page 24? and it's the joint procurement, 15.1. Is that correct approvals are sought via the democratic decision-making procedures. I know this won't go into details, but what are the democratic procedures? I mean, if you go to 15.2, the decision must ensure consultation with the corporate resources department involved in the project. Well, that I understand, but what is the democratic process? And before you jump in there, Holly, the second one I've got, just to speed things up a bit, is on page 39. If you look at the halfway down where it talks about Doncaster business, it says, a company or other organisation that has been an office or premises within the, and previously stated, Doncaster Metropolitan Borough Council. That's all been scrubbed out. Shouldn't it state City of Doncaster Council to be correct? Not just the council. Thank you.
I can amend that. I think I'm just trying to ensure that it's within the Doncaster boundary that the council serves. So I'm happy to amend that definition to City of Doncaster Council. On the joint procurement question, I can't see. Did you say page 24?
Yeah. The other page it's got is 10 of 2029 of that particular document, if you've not got page 24.
I can take that, Councillor Healy. It's effectively saying that decision making needs to be taken in accordance with the council's constitution. So that changes depending on the value of the procurements. As you know, if it's over £250,000, it's a key decision and it's taken at different levels. If it's lower, it's normally done at an officer level. That's what the reference is. It's not hugely eloquent, if I'm honest, but that's what it means.
Thanks, Scott. Question from Iris.
You'll have to bear with me. I have a selection of questions over through the course of the meeting from Councillor White. This one is to Holly, and it says, are we, CDC, carrying out these changes to the CPRs in similar timescales to other local authorities, and have other local authorities made the same type of changes?
Thank you. Yeah, I probably previously discussed this. I am a member of the Strategic Procurement Group, and that's all the heads of procurement for Yorkshire and Humber local authorities. So Procurement Act is something we've been discussing 6 weekly for probably 2 or 3 years now. I've spoken recently to Barnsley and Rotherham also directly about their changes, and we do share things and we share best practice, and so we are in sort of line with what other local authorities are doing, so just to give assurance.
Okay. Any further questions? Anybody else? No. I've got two for you, actually, Holly. So just on the first one, you mentioned that you are you attend WIRA forums and other bodies as well. So just in terms of what other councils are doing, there's been comments in press over the last couple of years about CCTV and solar panels from certain areas of China where there's human rights concerns and also cybersecurity concerns about the equipment coming from there. Should that be reflected in our PCRs, and is that something you've investigated at all? Yeah, so I suppose, well, it's titled as modern slavery. So modern slavery we do publish the modern slavery statement annually, and we also we try to eliminate all modern slavery in our supply chains through various work that we do. We are working currently regionally, and Leeds are the lead on it around modern slavery toolkit. So we're doing a bit of a contract. We are doing a contract review for high risk areas that could have modern slavery in them, such as construction, facilities, and so on.
the care sector. So there is ongoing work, but it's about tracking back through those supply chains. Does that answer your question?
And just to clarify, specifically those kind of issues with human rights issues from China, I know some councils have picked up on that specifically. Have we done any investigation on whether that's an exposure for us at the moment?
Yeah, we did look at this, you know, with the CCTV from China issue, which was, I was looking back at my old correspondence on it. I think it was around 2021. There was a note done on it, and we confirmed at that point in time we had no CCTV cameras from that region or any parts pertaining to that region. It was done actually in liaison with Debbie and others.
To be fair, at that point, it was more about security concerns as opposed to ethical concerns. I think as Holly's saying, we've got some way to go in terms of, because the complexity of it's, we're just responding to or pulling together because we're going to report on council motions, which is this area has sort of been, we've skirted on this through a council motion previously. We tend to use a lot of frameworks. The frameworks have already been through that quality assurance process, but there's always more to do in terms of making sure the efficacy of the supply chain.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. And just a not quite related question, but going back to what you were talking about in terms of some of the challenges with purchases for areas like care, for example. So just in terms of how other councils might deal with this, and also what we've got in the PCR, purchases that you see on the cards, and I know we've spoken before about this, such as there were a couple of examples from the last published data, payments to Netflix, to Spotify, even a payment to Centre Parks. Is there a better way of us dealing with these kind of transactions rather than it going through purchase cards, which is obviously open to abuse?
Yeah, we regularly review the purchase card spend, and it is published, like you say, on our webpage. There are payments for example, for Netflix, because children's homes buy that so that the children can have Netflix. And I would assume this, I don't know the specific transaction, but the Centre Parks is for related to probably children in care. Are there better ways? They're quite low value transactions, and sometimes those subscription type services won't allow us to do it through our ERP system. We're constantly reviewing it. Internal audit did do a review on purchasing card spend and sort of pulled up some bits on that, and I think that report probably went somewhere. But yeah, it's a continual movement. As long as it's in compliance with the purchasing card policy, which that is for now, then we're happy as such.
Scott?
I was going to say, by way of assurance, managers get full visibility on spend on purchase cards that are carried out in their area. So every month I receive a requirement to sign off any purchases made on mine. It tells me basically exactly what was spent, and if I have any queries, I speak to the holder of those cards. And certainly in my department, we have the minimum number of cards needed, frankly. And to ensure that that's easier done by, and all managers will get that visibility and will sign it off, and we'll have the ability to have that discussion. So there is controls.
And I think Peter probably might offer. Yeah, please.
Yeah, we've also got to consider the efficiency over the purchasing. The purchase card does provide us with a, very unbureaucratic means of making the purchases, and we are in audit now going to be refining the data work that we did at the end of the last financial year. We're going to be looking at it again, refining it for the next financial year with a view to see if we can sort of keep it really tight.
I might just summarise and kind of wrap up really from my perspective. So we have the financial procedure rules, which initially kind of set out that budget monitoring framework. We've got the finance manual, which kind of provides detail in terms of how payments need to be made, what records need to be kept, those kind of things. We then have various methods of kind of making the payment, all with specific controls, all have been audited at some point from an internal audit perspective in terms of the controls, and you've heard from Scott in terms of what controls are there from a purchase card. So the transactions are approved and there's the record, detailed record in terms of, well, you've seen what goes into the transparency spend, haven't you, really, in terms of what spend is there as well. We've also got, from an individual services perspective, in terms of that budget holder responsibility, delegations, etc. And when we're making the payments, we kind of need to balance that, as Pete says, the flexibility, the costs of making payments, and ensuring that we're kind of doing it in the simplest and quickest, with the controls there, way forward.
And sorry, just to pick up, you may have answered it, but I'm not sure I caught it. In terms of making the decision, so the one I'll pick on, with nearly £4,000 on going to Centre Parks, who makes the decision that that's value for money? Or does anybody make that decision?
The relevant service manager, or so who's got that delegated authority within that service. I'm assuming it might be more children's related in terms of, some of the care, provision, and that they will have, considered that from a value for money perspective, because every decision they have to consider that, and so weighing that up.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting the staff had just gone on a jolly for a week. Okay. Well, I was just kind of considering there should be a consideration on whether or not that's value for money. I mean, if I'm tight on money, I won't take my kids to Centre Parks. I'd be off to Skegness or something. So it's not that bad at Skeggy. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So is there a proposal to agree the recommendations as set out on paragraph 3 of this report? Can I ever move that? Thank you. And can I have it seconded?
Yes, I am.
Okay, agreed. Okay, thanks very much. And thank you, Holly. Okay, just moving on to item 6. So this is our Audit Committee action log. So as members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, the Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention, or has anything else he wishes to add since the report was drafted? Peter.
No, Chair, nothing to report. Both items are now fully completed. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any members wish to speak on this as well? No. I did have a question, but you've actually inadvertently answered it as we've gone on. So, so nobody else has got any questions. I think we can move on. So, can I have a proposal to agree the recommendations again as set out as item 3? Okay, David seconded. All agreed. Yep. Thank you. Okay. That recommendation is agreed. So moving on to item 7, the Taxi Services Progress Report. I do feel like we should have Dave Shaw for here. It's a shame we couldn't have him today. But as members have read the report, can I ask the report author, Claire, to just Head of Service Regulation and Enforcement, if she wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor. No, there's nothing additional to add to the report when it was written.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Does anybody have any questions? Iris.
Application, Chair.
Okay.
Mine, well, this is Austin to Peter. He says that, are you satisfied with the explanation given by the relevant officers, and are you concerned that they remain outstanding, which is number of overdue actions?
Thank you, Councillor. No, I'm happy with the situation that we're in here and has been presented today. I've actually personally been tracking progress over the last 20 months now since we completed our audit report on this area. There's been, very solid project management taking place, and the remaining audit actions will be completed once the new system is fully implemented. So I'm happy with the situation where we are.
Chair. I'm looking at page 102 in terms of the move from the paper to the website regarding the application for a taxi licence. And I'm relating it in a way to a constituent of mine. No further details other than that. But he was absolutely annoyed when he'd applied, got through, filled in the appropriate forms. But there appears to be a time factor because his DBS check was returned to him late. And when he put that in, it was rejected, which meant that he had to go through the whole process again and pay again, as I understand it, from him. Isn't there I know on the system, because I spoke to officers the last time we had the audit committee, licensing committee, which I'm a member of. And there is a part on the website that indicates whereby if you click on it and anything documentation is late, it's not overridden, it is accepted. But the applicant that I was talking to wasn't aware of that. I might need to go for further details if needs be. But it's just the sudden move, which I think is good. Don't get me wrong, I think it's good. But nevertheless, there may be those who are missing out because they're not looking at I need to have a look at myself as well, if I'm honest, and I haven't done that, I must admit. But they might be missing out, and if there's one driver or potential taxi driver missing out, there could be others missing out as well, or it's costing them more than they thought to try and get a taxi licence.
I'll just come in if that's all right. I think possibly, Councillor Healy, it's something that me and you maybe need to have a discussion just to go through the system. It should be, any late details, there is that it's on the portal, so therefore it's between the two parties, i.e. the licensing service and the individual, that can see when it's been submitted. So perhaps something me and you can pick up elsewhere, offline. Yeah.
Can I have a couple of...
Sorry, thank you, Claire. Iris.
No, this is me. A couple of items for clarification. I'm looking at page 101 and the bit about it's renewal reports. It says the type of suggestions including requesting to be informed of any arrest rather than those stipulated in the policy. And also the removal of the two character referees. I mean, whilst one does want to make sure people are fit to be driving young people about, but the referees, it could be two mates who said, yeah, we'll say. So do you still collect references, but from, people who aren't connected to the trade or something like that?
So the current policy at the moment is that the two referees can be any that the individual puts forward as their references. What we have found over time that sometimes this creates additional delays, and as you've just described, generally it's people that they know. So in that respect, it's not like a typical job application character reference as such. The idea is that we're looking with the new policy to sort of remove that factor in terms of allowing and streamlining the process to be a bit quicker because of the inherent delays that was generally sort of experienced.
Thank you. It's just, you know, having sat on the licensing committee for a long time and so many subcommittees, I just do, you know, get a bit worried about some of the people that appear before us eventually. So, you know, that wonder how they got a licence in the first place.
David.
Thank you, Chair. On page 99, there's work still proposed to be undertaken, and it's about delivering all 51 licensing forms online. And with what we've heard earlier about people having difficulties, is there still a way that people can contact the licensing department to make sure that what they've done is correct, and if they've got any issues, that they can still contact you?
Yeah, certainly. So the online portal or system web pages that we've developed, as I said, we've got 51 areas. We've sort of risk rated them or rag rated them in terms of those areas of the service that generally get a lot of throughput. And I'll give you the example. For example, taxi licensing, in comparison to our zoo licence, we only have one in the borough. So therefore, what we've done to have that consistent look on the web page, we've ensured that our more frequent areas have been sort of addressed and developed with our colleagues in the business analysts. But due to sort of obviously competing IT packages in the council, we've sort of accepted that we will look and develop those at a later date. So they're still there on the system. They don't just have that new uniform look that we're going for. And in terms of contacting us, we still have our contact through our emailing system. And we're also developing our sort of contact us webpage. That's a definite one, like a general inquiry, so that, you know, anybody can still contact the licensing service through the new webpage look that will go direct to the team.
Okay, any more questions at all? No, Iris? Yeah. Okay, I think we're all done. So I'll just move on to the recommendation. So it's a proposal to agree the recommendation as set out with paragraph 3 of the report. Is that agreed and seconded? Agreed, yeah. Okay. Recommendation agreed. Moving on to item 8, the internal audit report for the period October to December 2024. As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson if he wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Now this is my standard report and there's nothing material to update since it's been published, Chair, so happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Peter. We'll start with Councillor Healy.
You guessed that, didn't you? Sorry about that. It's not a question. I'm looking at page 115. I am correct in assuming that the framework that we've got there, number of actions at 31st of the 12th, 2025, should read 24. Oh, I got one. Thank you.
Iris.
Yes, thank you. I've got one for Peter from Austin, and then I've got something for myself as well. This is Peter. I've noticed that some resources have been unavailable due to sickness, and I've also noted some references to ongoing training of staff. So, can the Audit Committee be given assurance on your ability to provide an annual opinion given this absence due to sickness and the enhanced training provided to members of the internal audit team?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, at the start of the year, I'd already planned a big commitment to the team, both individually and wider, to increase the skills and qualifications within the team. So we had quite a significant allowance in the team for that. We do have an allowance in for sickness as well. It was higher than what we anticipated, but we just made sure that we prioritised the work that we did do and the work that we've been able to slip into being considered for next year's plan. We've been able to do that if it wasn't too timely related, in which case we would have made sure that it was covered. So it's not really impaired my intended ability to be able to offer a positive opinion. That's where it's looking at the moment. Thank you.
My question, if I find it, I've just lost it. Yes, it was on page 108. It's just a little line that says, number 17, a relative new section has been added to introduce changes that will apply to the work for the team from the 1st of April. Are you, on schedule with getting that in?
Yes, Councillor, we are on schedule. As I think I mentioned at the previous meeting, if we are compliant with the existing United Kingdom public sector internal audit standards, then we are a long way on the road to being compliant with the global internal audit standards. We're carrying out a gap analysis at the moment. It's identifying some actions that we know we need to do. The people from SIPFA that have been advising heads of audit have said, you can't be compliant from the 1st of April. You cannot be operating to the new standards until you are operating to them, but you need to know where you are and what you've got to do and have a clear timetable. So we're on track to achieve that.
Yes, thank you for that. I got a memory of going through this before, but we don't want to find ourselves in trouble because we're lagging behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Question, well, just a statement as well before I start. You don't appear to have any overdue high-risk items, so congratulations. I think that's quite an achievement. It was a very different story when I first joined this audit committee, so we've definitely come a long way. However, I'm struggling to find, I thought there should be an IT audit reported in this period, and I'm struggling to find it. I seem to have a recollection of us talking about a systems audit. Have I completely misunderstood?
There's a couple of audits which are being completed at the moment, so they'll be either included in, well, not the annual report unless they are particularly significant. They'll appear in the July's progress report. Yeah. And I think there was also one that was completed and reported in November's progress report as well.
I'll go back through my notes. Thank you for that, Peter. And just in terms of within the progress report, you mentioned about our achievement of complying with the new audit standards. Are you happy that you have been able to meet those and you have the level of independence required as a head of audit?
Yes, we get examined on that as part of the existing standards. I won't say it all over again, United Kingdom, that. And that was questioned because as long as I'm reporting to a member of the management team, which face sits on the top table, then that's considered independent from a management perspective. I've also got built into my job description the direct right of access to chair and vice of audit committee, to any of the executive directors and to the chief executive as required. So I am sort of sat very independently in that respect.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we've got one extra question from Iris. Councillor Beach.
Yes, to you again, Peter, I'm afraid. It says, it's from Austin. I've noted the number of overdue medium and low-risk management actions remain low, and they are static in number. I can see that revised implementation dates have been agreed for these actions, which have required further extension of time. Do you have any concerns in this area?
I think it continues on from Vice Chair's comment at the start of this, that it's very reassuring to see that we've got no high-risk overdue actions. The number of overdue lower or medium level actions I am happy with. I'd like to not see any. We have had discussions over 4 of them around the taxi licensing audit that we did some time ago now, but we're happy with the reasons for extensions having to be given there, and we're broadly happy with the reasons for extensions given on the other overdue actions. It's very difficult in getting the balance of priorities for senior management. Things happen and sometimes circumstances change for them not to be able to implement actions in the timescale that they originally anticipated. But we do go through a very thorough authorisation process whereby a service director has to authorise any extension alongside me being satisfied with the reasons. So in overall terms, I'm happy with where we are, yes.
Thanks, Councillor Beach. And Peter, just in terms, just to kind of wrap this up, under the performance information in section 4, you give a statement under 4.4, 4.5 and 4.6, which essentially gives us as Audit Committee assurance of your satisfaction over the plan coverage and your role and opinion regarding risk governance and overall control. Have you got anything you wanted to add verbally?
I don't think there's a lot to add to this. We haven't identified any serious issues during the year that we want to be considered for next year's AGS. In overall terms, the number of limited assurance reports has been and remains very low. We are generally reporting reasonable levels of assurance in the areas that we're looking at. Our planned coverage is sufficient alongside other assurances for me to be happy that I'll be able to give an opinion. At the moment, there isn't anything untoward that's looking like it'll be any form of an adverse opinion. So no, it's just a bit of reassurance still to you, Chair, that I'm in a happy place, which is very different to a lot of colleagues in the surrounding area that I speak to regularly. So I'm in a happy place, Chair.
Good to hear. Thanks very much, Peter. And overall, it seems a very positive report, so congratulations. Thank you. Is there any other questions, David? No. In that case, is there a proposal to agree the recommendations as set out in paragraph 19 of the report? Moved? Agreed? Seconded? Thank you. Okay, the recommendation is agreed. And then moving on to item 9. So this is the statement of accounts and annual governance statement. I'll apologise ahead of this because I've got all my questions upside down on this in terms of where they are in the report, but we'll try and make it easy. So members, please note all the papers for this item were not included in the original pack. They're in that huge monstrosity of a pack that was given to us as well. However, all the committee members have been forwarded the papers by email or hard copies. Yeah, I won't print it out, 252 pages. As all members have read the report, can I ask Faye Tyas, Chief Financial Officer and Service Director for Finance and Technology, if she wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Faye.
Thank you. Nothing to add to the report. As you say, this is our annual report on the statement of accounts. We have Rob Isaac here from the team as well, and I understand training has been provided, so hopefully that was helpful. And just to kind of say, I'm pleased in terms of the report, and thanks to the team and working with Grant Thornton. I'll just hand on to Gareth.
Thanks, Faye, and thanks, Chair. I'll just say a few brief words on the ICE 260, and then Parminder will take the committee through some of the key salient points. I think key message for me is that the audit's gone well. Members of this committee will be aware that we slightly delayed the start of your audit this year, unusually, in order to finish off some late-running audits elsewhere within the region. And, through no issues with Doncaster as such, you were just sort of pushed towards the later in the queue for delivery. But in spite of that, the audit has progressed very well. We're still going to conclude the audit in advance of the backstop date at the end of this month. So from our perspective, many thanks to Faye, Rob and the rest of the finance colleagues for their engagement in the audit throughout the last few months. I think you know, I'm on track to issue a clean audit opinion probably tomorrow, which is a good outcome for the council. And I think, you know, the key thing to emphasise from my perspective is that you will have a full audit concluded and you will not be captured by the backstop in comparison with a number of other authorities around the country. And I can't emphasise enough, once you're in that backstop disclaimed audit opinions place, it's very, very difficult to get out of it and get back to a fully clean opinion. It's going to take a long, long time for a number of authorities around the country to get back to a position where you currently are and have been for a number of years. So I'll hand over to Parminder at that point just for a few key points in this report, and then I'll take you through the VFM report later. Thank you.
Thanks, Gareth, and good afternoon, everybody. You have before you our audit findings report, which sets out the findings from our 23-24 audit. We commenced our work in October, with the bulk of it being completed by December, and then there was a few loose ends that we finished off in early January. This report is dated the 18th of December, and there are a couple of additional items I want to bring to your attention. I'll come on to those shortly. We've not identified any audit adjustments which impact on your outturn position and usable reserve for the council. I think that's quite important to note. We did identify a number of minor disclosure and presentational audit adjustments which have been agreed by management and have been processed in the final version of the accounts. We raised one recommendation for management, and this related to the fixed asset register and plant and equipment and vehicles with net book value of nil, which were still being used, and we recommended that in the final year those assets are reviewed and the life of those assets extended if those assets are expected to last longer than you actually have down, which is more appropriate. Management has agreed that recommendation, and that's included in the action plan at the end of the report. As Gareth mentioned, we're anticipating issuing an unqualified opinion tomorrow. The only final couple of steps that we need to go through are receiving the final signed version of the financial statements, the narrative report and the annual governance statement, along with the letter of representation. And then we'll undertake a final review of any post-balance sheet events before we sign the audit opinion. On page 5 of our report, just touching on VFM, our auditor's annual report, which summarises our value for money work, is actually on the next item, so I won't go into that in detail here. Gareth will pick that up separately. Just moving on to the section on page 7 of the report, which talks about materiality, just to bring to your attention that our materiality level for the council was 11.46 million. That was based on our initial audit plan and has not changed as part of the final accounts audit work. Our audit plan sets out what we thought were the key significant risks, and those were around management override of control, which all auditors are required to consider. No issues came out from our work in that area. The second area was looking at risk in fraud, in revenue recognition and in expenditure recognition. We rebutted that risk at the audit planning stage, and we reviewed that rebuttal as part of our final accounts. We do undertake quite a lot of work on income and expenditure, which is set out on page 9 of our report, and we found no issues in that regard from the work that we undertook. The other two key significant risks relate to the big numbers in your account. So one of them relates to the valuation of land and buildings, including council dwellings. There were no significant issues from our work in that area, which is set out on page 10. And then over the page, on page 11, the other big numbers relate to the defined benefit pension scheme, which was in an asset position for this year. Now, this is where I just want to touch on. Since we issued our draft report on the 18th of December, we undertook and received further information. There were a number of areas that were still outstanding at that time, and we identified 2 amendments which are not being processed by management on the basis that they're not material. The first one relates to the South Yorkshire Pension Fund auditor identifying in their report an unadjusted error on pooled investment vehicles of around 68.5 million. Of that, 9.4 relates to Doncaster, And because of the credit ceiling calculation, that reduces the impact down to 1.4 million. So in essence, your balance sheet is potentially understated on assets by 1.4 million. That number, as I said, has not been adjusted because it's not considered material. The second area which offsets that is a further adjustment that was identified relating to the difference between the benefits paid in the year, which is noted in your actuary's report, and the benefits recorded by the South Yorkshire Pension Fund. There was a difference of 4.9 million. That goes the other way. Again, that is not considered material by management, has not been adjusted. So the net impact of both of those is just short of 3.5 million. And that's recorded as audit adjustments which haven't been processed by management at the year end. So those two are missing from the original report. So I just want to make sure that you are aware of that. Going back to the remaining area, for the first time last year, you had a pension asset in your accounts. Again, you have another pension asset valuation this year, and it was capped to 29.1 million. There's an asset ceiling calculation that the actuary undertakes and which we have reviewed, which is considered appropriate. So you're showing a pension asset of 29.1 million on your balance sheet. On page 16, just want to draw attention to IFRS 16 implementation. That comes into play from the 1st of April next year. All authorities are required to implement that particular standard. And it was pleasing to note that the finance team had actually undertaken sufficient work to provide a disclosure which is likely to be impacting on the council, which is different to a number of other authorities that we audit that hadn't time to do that. So I think it's worth noting the additional work that the finance team had done on that. The other big area I think I just want to touch on is on page 16, the Doncaster Sheffield Airport lease, which was signed on the 20th of March, just before the year end. Now, a finance lead should be recognised on your balance sheet at the lower of the fair value of the leased asset or the present value of minimum lease payments. And you'd estimated that at 14.8 million, but you were waiting for a valuation to come through. So the valuation came through a little bit later, which meant that you had to make an adjustment and update the accounts in respect of that to 56.6 million. So an adjustment is shown as 41.8 million on the adjusted schedule of misstatements in the appendix. I think finally, just want to refer to, there are no independence issues that we wish to bring to your attention. We are independent of the council and all the work that we undertake, and we undertake no other services for you. And I think lastly, just to mention that our fees are set out at Appendix E. Nothing further to add from that, but happy to take questions.
Thanks very much, Praminda. Have we got any particular questions? No. David?
You've got here the authorities defined benefit pension scheme. Is that different to the LGPS South Yorkshire Pension Authority, or is it your slice of it? Right. That answered that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Just in terms of, you mentioned the adjustment for the airport lease, the 41.8 million. Why was that adjustment necessary? Why was it so far out?
So airports are very unique assets. There's not many of them, and most authorities up and down the country don't have an airport that they lease. So it's very unique. You'd estimated it based on the present value of future lease payments, which is one of the bases that you're allowed to value it on. However, it should be the lower of that or the actual value. So at the time the lease was signed, you didn't have access to have a valuation done at that time. And actually finding a valuer to do that, I think, did take a little bit of time, but it did eventually come through, I think, towards November-ish, quite later on, which then gave you a more appropriate number and more importantly, as the report says, the split between land and buildings was very different to what your judgment was at the time. So that's not an indication that in any way the finance team were unable to value it appropriately. It's just simply that they didn't have the breakdown given you've not done this before.
Okay, thanks for a minute. Just on page 20 of the report, we've got the information technology assessment. I know that the level of assessment performed was only at design effectiveness for the ITGC. What was the reason for that? Why was there no E performed on these?
Sorry, can you just repeat that again?
Yeah, I hope I'm in the right place. I think it's page 20. You've got some lovely pictures of circles and like a traffic light rating. But under the column level of assessment performed, it says detailed ITGC assessment design effectiveness. I just wondered why there was no operating effectiveness performed.
Yeah, so that falls into, I think, the controls in place within the council, and I think the detailed recommendations and our findings are actually set out Appendix C. So there were a number of areas that we'd identified last year. You have made some progress on them, which is on sort of page 32 onwards. But there are still some areas that you need to progress on those, and that's why those were rated amber. I think it's also just important to note at the top of page 32 that these weaknesses were not considered sufficiently significant to impact on our audit approach or our audit of your financial statements.
Okay, thanks, Praminda. And we've gone through the AGS as well. Faye, did you have anything to say on the AGS? Just some questions on the AGS then. From the report, there appears to be, in this year's AGS, there's 7 significant issues, and 4 of these have been effectively managed and removed from the AGS. We can see that 2 new areas of significant risks have been identified, and these have been added. This gives us a total of 5 areas to focus on in the current AGS, a decrease of 2. As the AGS has been delayed due to the delay with the accounts, does this remain the case? These numbers are correct?
Yeah, as part of the process, we produce the draft in April, and every quarter, as part of our quarterly process, we kind of get updates in terms of the AGS items, and it's been updated in January is the latest update. So the dates are updated, etc., where things have completed.
Debbie?
You remember I talked about the sort of witches coven in terms of that sort of process around how we build up the AGS. Well, Sinead and Haley have been around that process again to make sure that it's updated because of the fact that it was delayed in terms of being published. So they produced it, reviewed it, and then they've reviewed it again because of the delay.
Okay, and question to both of you. Do you wish to add anything about the send position from the AGS point of view?
I'd probably say it's relevant for the next item, which is a value for money item. Can pick it up with there, if that's okay.
Yeah, so we cover VFF under section 10, item 10, do we? Yeah.
Yeah, the annual auditor letter.
Excellent. Okay. Good. I don't think I've got any further questions. No. Good. Anything else? No. In that case, a proposal is to agree the recommendations as set out in paragraph 11, items A to E of the report. Is that moved? And seconded? Yep. Thank you. All agreed. Okay. In that case, we move on to item 10. So this is the Auditor's Annual Report for 2023-2024, and I'm right in thinking including the VFM as well statement. As all members have read the report, can I ask Gareth Mills and Praminda from Grant Thornton if they wish to bring any specific issues to members' attention or have anything to add since the report was drafted? Gareth.
Thanks very much, Chair. So, as you rightly say, this is the Auditor's Annual Report for 23-24, or sometimes referred to as the VFM report, where we obviously are required to look at your arrangements in place for value for money. At Grant Thornton, over the last couple of years, we've built up our own sort of separate specialist VFM audit team to deliver this work in order to keep that value for money work up to date on a timely basis across the country. So the bulk of this work was led by our colleague Andy Nichols and his team. Unfortunately, Andy couldn't be here today, but clearly myself and Perminder have fed into this report on a regular basis throughout the year, and I'm being involved with Andy in his discussions with senior management to discuss and agree the report that you've got in front of you today. So appreciate it's quite a detailed, lengthy report, so I'll just draw out some of the key messages from my perspective, and perhaps just focusing on the exec summary. Page 179 or 7 of our report. RAG rates, I guess, the findings across the 3 themes that we look at. So we look at financial sustainability, governance, and then improving economy, efficiency, effectiveness, the 3 E's, or effectively sort of performance against your key objectives. So in the prior year, we issued one key recommendation, which is the sort of higher level, more significant level of recommendation, and that was in relation to the DSG position. For 23-24, in high level terms, we have still just the one significant finding, again on the DSG position, which we'll go into in a little bit more detail in a moment. There are no other significant weaknesses identified in terms of your arrangements in 23-24, so overall I would say it's a broadly positive report for the Council to just have that one particular area drawn out around the DSG position. And as we all know, it's an area that certainly this committee's discussed quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years. You're by no means unique in having a significant challenge around DSG. When I look around the rest of my client portfolio and indeed around the country, this is a significant challenge facing a number of local authorities. In addition to the DSG finding, there was a small number of lower level improvement recommendations that we raised, mainly in relation to financial risk reporting and the tracking and reporting around savings delivery, and also in relation to the Council's involvement with the reopening of the airport. In addition, in this report, you'll see an appendix of a letter that I sent to the Chief Executive back in November in relation to the Council's involvement in the reopening of Doncaster Sheffield Airport. It's an area clearly that we've been in discussions with management with for a number of months now. It'll be a continued area of focus for Perminder and my successor as audit lead going into the 24-25 audit. Given the, changing nature of the Council's involvement in that project from where we were at the March 24 year end, which this report relates to what's happened subsequently. So I'll pause at that point, Chair. I'm conscious, there's quite a lot in this report, but for me, broadly positive report. DSG, significant finding again, but you're not unique in that, and some other sort of improvement level recommendations for monitoring in 24-25, in addition to clearly the progress on the airport, which will be a key focus of our work for next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gareth. Do any members have any questions? Iris? Okay, right. I'll start. Right, so on page 7, which is our pack 179, I think, page 7 of your report, Gareth, we now have a red under financial sustainability, which is, a red under finance, which is a carry-on from last time, which is clearly influenced by the DSG. But more interestingly, we've moved from a green position on governance and improving economy. Would you like to just explain why that's deteriorated?
So, yes, you're right to identify that, Chair. What I would say is that I suppose that's the methodology that GT have utilised for that sort of simple exec summary table. So if you look at the key in the bottom left, if if we've highlighted an improvement level recommendation, you're automatically sort of dropped into an amber grading. So, you know, we have identified a small number of improvement recommendations across governance and the 3Es, which we didn't in the prior year. So on that basis, you could argue that there has been a slight deterioration in arrangements overall, but what I would say is that they're not significant from our point of view. We don't see them as significant weaknesses that require a high-level key recommendation, but there are a couple of issues, obviously, that we have identified this year, which has led to that slightly different outcome as per that table, Chair.
And just, you mentioned the 3Es. I had a look at last year's report and compared it to this year's. I'm really struggling to see the difference. What is the difference?
So as I say, it's because we've identified some improvement level recommendations, and I suppose linked to the letter that was sent in November around, you know, principally in relation to the council's involvement in the airport that's generated those improvement recs. So clearly that wasn't a factor in our work last year. And therefore, you know, the commentary and findings in relation to the arrangements in place regarding the reopening of the airport project has dropped into the report this year. We've identified a couple of improvement recs from our perspective to date, and therefore that's why that is showing as a reduction.
And you mentioned... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say on page 20 of our report, it sort of sets out the risk management arrangements and taking sort of a stand-back assessment of the appropriateness of the risks that you've got and whether they still remain appropriate. I think it's perhaps polishing up and improving existing arrangements. It's not saying that you've got significant weaknesses. It's just it can be improved and developed a little bit further.
Thanks very much. So just going back, you mentioned the letter from November, which we've got in our packs as well. Obviously, that's quite a serious letter for you guys to write. I can't imagine you write that very often. For the more lay of us sat across here, can you just explain what's Grant Thornton's position in writing that letter?
So you're right, Chair. Obviously, you know, a letter of that nature is not typical, and clearly, you know, needs to go through appropriate due process within the firm before it was issued. In my view, I thought it was appropriate to set out our thoughts to the Chief Executive and the other statutory officers in relation to, I guess, the changing nature of that particular project. And to, you know, let's be very clear, you know, the changes in relation to the airport project were brought to us by you know, Faye and Scott and other colleagues to highlight that things had moved on since the March 24 position during the late summer, and therefore, from our perspective, that did change the potential risks in relation to that particular project, potentially quite significantly, and therefore I thought it appropriate to set out our comments to Damien in that letter in November. Now, I appreciate, obviously, again, the world has moved on since the middle of November, as I'm sure, you know, Debbie and Faye will no doubt confirm, and it's something that we will be looking at as part of our 24-25 audit work, led by my successor, but in conjunction with Perminder and Andy Nichols. It will be an area, obviously, of audit focus, given the significance of that particular scheme, Chair. So I suppose in summary, you know, the changing nature of that particular project during the summer, from my perspective, warranted sending that letter.
Okay, thanks very much, Gareth. Just in terms of, you mentioned about some of the upcoming risks within the VFM, and I just want to pick up on a couple of things that I don't think I saw in here. One is, I notice in the accounts we seem to be having less non-domestic business rates going forward. Is that a risk that you're seeing elsewhere? Should we expect those to continue to go down in the current climate, or what are you seeing elsewhere?
Difficult to give an overall view on, I guess, Chair. I mean, as part of the any local authorities sort of MTFS budget setting process, we'd expect, any key potential risks to be considered and reviewed and a view taken on them. So, I'm sure officer colleagues may wish to comment. It wasn't something that we particularly wanted or thought necessary to raise in this VFM report, but it's something I guess we will keep under review and may consider in future years.
Okay, Debbie's looking perplexed. Oh. Do you want to comment on anything?
Because I just don't. I was trying to find out where it was, because business rates is pretty. We're in a growing area for business rates, so that's not really a risk that we'll be. Obviously we're with the fairer funding formula and the subsequent changes that might take place in 25-26. We've yet to see what the financial climate might be in relation to how resources are allocated from central government, but at the stands, it's not a risk that we're currently.
Yeah, I was going to dig it out from the accounts, but I thought I saw the number going down in terms of non-domestic rates. Am I wrong? Oh, is it going up?
Got growth, so that can't be right.
I'm just looking at the budget report where we're reporting that an overall increase in the retained business rates income of 5.6 is expected. So it might be that we just have a quick conversation really in terms of recovery. The recovery is progressing positively. We are with the growth, we have got growth assumptions in there, and there is sometimes a delay in terms of actually achieving some of that growth, but generally
it's an onward increase.
Yeah, so just to bottom that out, I may have misread some of the numbers. So, what are the numbers related to the collection fund? Just jumping around in the accounts. Rob, are you able to offer an explanation? Because there's some numbers in there. I may have misread that particular section of the accounts.
About the collection fund in general, an overall position. I haven't got the figures in front of me, but in terms of the collection fund itself, obviously that's split between council tax and business rates, so that's both in there. So which figures are you particularly questioning?
I suppose both of those are on the increase though, Chair, because
those are on the increase.
In terms, because the number of properties we're developing, that we've built in the city have increased, and the level of businesses we've got, they're both growth. That's in part how we've mitigated some of our savings requirements. So although we're an agent that collects and distributes in particular around business rates, so I think that if there is a reference, we are sometimes a bit like glass half full in terms of thinking that take some big warehouses where we think they're going to come into rateable value. They've been built and they're ready to go, but they're not occupied. So we've built them in as part of growth, as part of our medium-term financial strategy. But there isn't an occupant that's actually paying. So there's always a little bit of a challenge in relation to that. But certainly we're on a, from an economic point of view, we've been reliant on achieving both growth in domestic and business rates.
The report incorporates business rates collectible after reliefs and provisions was 103 million in 23-24 and 96 million in 22-23. So represents an increase. So we can have a specific conversation.
Thanks for that. And Gareth, just going back to short and medium term risks, obviously a lot of local authorities are struggling with increase in national insurances and pay increases. Do you consider that in your statement in here?
Yeah, so we'd look at the arrangements in place to construct the budget, looking at the assumptions, sensitivity analysis that obviously, you know, Faye and colleagues will go through as part of that budget setting process, and you know, any revisions to budget in year for circumstances as they move on. So that is something that we do look at and do reflect on in the report. It's part of the financial sustainability theme that we review. I guess from our point of view, you know, there were no significant issues with the council's arrangements in place to construct its budget and MTFS from our perspective. The only sort of significant finding, as we previously discussed, is the DSG position. But let's say you're not on your own on that, and there may well be, there'll have to be a national answer to that, as opposed to, you know, all that sitting with individual authorities, given the scale of the challenge nationally.
Thanks, Gareth. And I think Debbie knows what my question is going to be. So would you like to comment on our DSG position as it continues to be the key recommendation in Gareth's report?
I guess you're aware of all the plethora of approaches that we've had, that we've set out to tackle the DSG position. And I think as an authority we're doing our utmost in terms of, as a partnership, engaging with schools, mainstreaming provision, reducing expenditure as much as possible, looking at alternative provision where we can, bringing children back into the city so that there isn't expensive placements outside of the city. And I guess I just want to mention the 5 billion that the local government association estimates across the nation. So yes, it is a big and worrying position, which isn't of our doing. The environment, the procedure, the rules, the regulations, that have been set out and we operate within terms of, preparing the health and social care plans for children with challenging needs in schools. That's how we've got to where we are. It's not been of our making. So you're absolutely right. It's a national challenge, and we look forward to when the government either change the rules or provide the resources through the Hyde Knee Box, so that we aren't in this position. So as a council, we're not funding the cash flow that's required in order to have the carry forward deficit.
Yeah, and I think we all wish to thank you and Faye and your entire team for trying to manage that DSG as best you can, given the fact that most of it's out of your control. And I think Gareth's reiterating that in his comments today. So good. I've got no further questions. Yeah, David. Good. Okay, in that, Grace, I'd like to propose the report is noted. Is that agreed? Thank you. Excellent. Well, that nearly concludes our business for today, with just one exception. I understand, Gareth, this is your last day and your last audit committee with us. So I know Austin would like to send his thanks, and I'm sure he wishes he was here in person. I know you've helped him guide through all of this for the last few years, and I'm sure on behalf of the rest of the audit committee, we've enjoyed your time with us as well. So thank you very much, Gareth. You will be missed. Faye, Peter?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to put on the record CDC thanks as well. It's been good working with Gareth. As we've kind of updated each time, really, in terms of that collaborative approach, and it's hopefully we'll continue.
Just if I may, Chair, thank you for your kind words and Faye. It's been a real privilege to lead the audit at Doncaster Council. Really good organisation. Really enjoyed time working with you and other member colleagues, with Councillor White as well as Chair, and Debbie, Faye, Damien, Scott, Rob, Pete, internal audit. Yeah, I really enjoyed the time at Doncaster. I just wish you and the council all the very best in your future endeavours. I'm not leaving GT, so I've said if Perminder and my successor wish to chat through anything, I'm obviously still around, and obviously Perminder's still going to be around for 24-25 as well. So there's that continuity there. But yes, wish you all the very best, and thanks for all your engagement and support in the audit process throughout the last 5 years. It's been really helpful, and it shows the importance you attach to things like accounting, governance, audit, really important things. And I think one of my, well, it's not my quote, but a quote that I always mention quite a bit on training, I think I mentioned it the other week, is that it's really important to do the boring things well in local government, because when you don't, that's when things go off track. I know we on the audit committee don't find things like audit and accounting and governance boring, but I just emphasise that, and thanks very much again, Chair. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Gareth, and you left us in a better state than you found us. So thank you very much. Excellent. I now draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much. Thank you.